Thank you for joining us. This webinar is scheduled to start exactly 1 minute past the hour. So 1 minute past the hour, and we'll give everyone else a chance to register and log in. So thank you for joining this webinar. We're scheduled to start in exactly 1 minute past the hour. So we're giving everyone a few more minutes, actually a few more seconds to join in. We're starting in just a few seconds' time. So welcome everyone to one of our last webinars of the year, and a really good chance to look back at some of the great things that have happened on Twitter in 2015, and also look ahead a bit. Look ahead and think about how we can plan ahead for a very successful start to 2016. It's been a great year, and we've got some amazing content to share with you in the next few minutes. But one thing to note before we get started about technology. So this webinar is being shared with people all across Europe, and we have people joining us on all kinds of devices and internet connections. If you're joining us today on a mobile device, and specifically an iPad, please note that there may be a couple moments where you might hear and notice that you lose my voice or the screen may freeze. It happens. If that happens to you, all you need to do is refresh your browser screen on your device, and that should get you back with us without a problem in no time. So pressing the refresh button on your browser resolves most of the technical issues experienced. And before we get started, let's go through who's talking to you today. That's me in the photo. I'm Larry, and I'm a marketing manager for Twitter in our European headquarters in Dublin, Ireland. You can find me on both Twitter and Periscope with the username Larinum, and you'll find that I have a particular fondness for tweets with quirky emoji or animated GIFs. So if you have any emoji or GIFs to share, tweet them my way. And while we're talking about tweeting, you should know that the hashtag we're using today is hashtag #Plan42016. We're going to go through many topics today. So tweet to us about the things that you find useful. Tweet to us your questions, and tweet to us whatever else you think about the new year with the hashtag #Plan42016, and my colleagues and I will answer every single tweet. So we've got a great agenda today. We're looking at all the inspiring things that happened on Twitter in 2015, and we're looking ahead how agencies specifically can plan ahead and make a successful start to 2016. We're starting off with an overview of Twitter and our family of apps, followed by some creative examples from brands from the year 2015. Finally, we're looking at some of the best practice you can take and incorporate into your own plans looking into the new year. When we start talking about our plans for 2016, we should think about the big trends impacting the world today. And perhaps one of the biggest trends we have is the dawn of the mobile age, where smartphones have become irreplaceable parts of our lives. We have our smartphones with us when we're having our morning coffee. We have our smartphones when we go and commute to work. We have them when we go out and do exercise, or we have them in the evenings when we watch TV. So smartphones are used all the time, and in Twitter's case, the important thing to remember is that 80% of our users log in on their mobile devices. So when you think about Twitter, you should be thinking about it as a mobile-first platform, and keep that in mind when you're planning ahead for the new year. Consider that we have our phones with us all day, every day. Our phones are our constant companions and an ever-present source for content. The average person unlocks their phone 110 times a day. Think about how much that is, how often that is, and how it affects how we behave. So what is it that people do with their phones every day? Let's look at a few examples from Twitter's family of apps. So we use our phones a lot these days, but what do we actually do with them? Well, one thing a lot of people obviously like to do is they like to be entertained. I mean, who doesn't? And one very popular and fun app that many people use and is run by Twitter is called Vine, which allows anyone to create a 6-second looping video like the one you see on the left here, and people get very creative in the way it gets used. Well, we watch over 1.5 billion Vine loops every single day. So globally, there's 1.5 billion Vine loops watched each day. And then there's Periscope. This is a new app this year, so not everyone may have yet heard about it. And it was just last week announced as the App of the Year by Apple's App Store. With Periscope, anyone can share their point of view with the world through live streaming video on their own smartphones. The amazing thing about Periscope is that it was only released earlier this year, and we already see over 40 years of live broadcast on Periscope every single day. And finally, let's talk about Twitter. Every second there's over 6,000 tweets around the world. That makes 1 billion tweets every second day. Just try to visualize how much that is and how people around the world are sharing their thoughts instantly with everyone else. We're going to go through some of the highlights specifically of Twitter and some key talking points of 2015. And I'm going to show you a 2-minute video next. So let me put up the volume a bit and let you guys enjoy this.
They say you're finished.
What do you think?
I think you're just getting started.
Hi everybody, we just want to say a massive thank you for voting for us at the Brits. Love you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for the most unlikely cult of the 21st century, Millie fandom.
I have decided in 2020 to run for president.
Let's pray.
Will you marry me? I will.
And then somebody just texted me and said, can you just search the dress on Twitter?
Oi, we are live in the new Big Brother house.
Here's my outfit. It's a mod look for my LUK shoot.
The space out wide here for Japan. Here's Heska.
He's done it.
Your future is whatever you make.
It's calling to you.
So those were some great overall highlights on Twitter, but now let's turn our attention to some of the creative brand examples and best practices we've seen through businesses using Twitter in 2015. We're going to go through 4 core talking points here, starting with the everyday moments that we know Twitter users express in their day-to-day lives. Then we'll look at some of the key events that happened in the year and how brands effectively won share of voice. Then we're going to look at the passions people follow on Twitter and how brands were effectively joining the conversation. And finally, we'll look at the signals of intent and moments where brands were effectively driving direct response. One important thing to remember about Twitter is that it's not just about the big events that get people talking. It's the everyday conversations that actually make up the majority of all tweets. And one of Twitter's most powerful advantages is the always-on aspect of conversations on our platform. Some topics will flow constantly from day to day, to week, to month, and it's a great opportunity for brands to engage with great content throughout the whole year. So one really useful takeaway you can take from this webinar is this key set of statistics about everyday moments, part of a research piece we did earlier. And you can share this with your clients when you're talking about everyday moments, because these are really good insights to remember. And first of all, specifically brands that advertise during everyday moments and the topics around them, we've found that these can typically get up to a 22% lower cost per impression for their promoted tweets. Another important statistic is that there's often less competition when it comes to brands who are talking about everyday moments. So again, according to our research, you can get up to 2.5 times higher share of voice when you take advantage of them. And thirdly, perhaps most importantly, we found through our research that tweeting on the topics of everyday moments can have a real impact in your sales and an uplift of up to 1.5 to 2 times. So let's just go through one of these everyday moments examples, and specifically coffee. So in the trend line here, you can see that on a week-to-week basis, from Monday to Sunday, typically we get a lot of tweets about coffee. Sometimes in the early morning there's a peak, but also the conversations happen throughout the day. Overall, each week we get about 15 million tweets about coffee, and it's a really hot talking point week in, week out. And some brands are very effective in tapping into this conversation when they have something meaningful to share. So let's look at a couple good examples of companies tweeting about the everyday moment of coffee. As you'll notice, neither of these companies are actually sell coffee. So ASOS and River Island, they don't really do that, but they tap into this conversation really well. Now, tweeting like this is very good not only for getting more engagements like retweets and likes for your account, but it also allows you to show your personality of your brand. It allows you to show you as a human. So from everyday moments, now let's look at the big events of 2015. Some of the big moments we will see really got people talking, and brands really were able to take part. These are the kind of things that started trending on Twitter and captured the attention of a whole country and possibly even the world. 2015 was a huge year for events on Twitter. These are just some of the main talking points around the music, sports, and TV this year. Twitter users love to take part in conversations around these kind of events, and aligning your campaigns as an advertiser to the key sporting, TV, or music events throughout the year is a great way to encourage excitement and participation around these real-time conversations. And when we look at the big events happening in 2015, let's start in the field of music. Musicians are hugely influential on Twitter. 31 out of the top 50 most followed accounts on Twitter are all musicians, and so when one of them does something big, like launches a new album, it has a really big impact on Twitter. When Adele released her new album in November, it was a hugely anticipated event by many fans around the world, and you can imagine that this got people talking at a massive scale on Twitter as well. There were over 250,000 tweets specifically with the hashtag Adele25 on the release day, and you can imagine that it was a big trending topic and really hard to avoid on Twitter. So, and interesting to note as well is that some brands were really able to emphasize and capture the tone of conversation here. So BuzzFeed, for example, had a really effective tweet on that day. It was also the live events that got people talking on Twitter in 2015, and we're just going to go through examples from the Rugby World Cup, Glastonbury, and Wimbledon in the next slide. So let's look at 3 examples of brands taking part in big events in 2015. On the left, you'll see a tweet by EE that they tweeted out during Glastonbury, and it was a really good way to emphasize that actually they're participating in an event, and also that if you are running out of juice on your phone there, they can help you. In the middle, you see a tweet by Dove, and this happened during the Rugby World Cup, and it was a really effective way to showcase behind the scenes of the Welsh team, actually. And finally, on the right-hand side, you'll see a tweet by Paddy Power that they tweeted out during Wimbledon. And again, it was a rain break. It was a bit of a lull in the moment, in the excitement. So they tweeted out a bit of fun to everyone who's following the live action on Twitter. So after looking at some examples of tweets tapping into big events, now let's look at tweets that tap into people's passions on Twitter. So many people come to Twitter to follow the things that they're most passionate about, and some brands can really participate well. So we're going to go through just 4 of the passions people follow on Twitter, just as examples. We're going to go through an example from fitness, cooking, music, and gaming. So let's go through these passions one by one. And first of all, exercise is a good example of a topic that gives people a reason to tweet. So a lot of athletes and people who are really into exercise like to tweet about it, share their passion. And cooking, that's a good example of a passion that people like to get inspiration from Twitter. People love to get recipe ideas on Twitter. And music, that's a good example of a topic that really gives people a reason to follow. So people follow their favorite musicians on Twitter. Finally, gaming is a good example of a passion that people really like to build up a community towards. So people who are really into specific games like to connect with people who also share their passion in those games. So let's look at some examples of tweets by brands that connect with people's passions on Twitter effectively. So first of all, on the top left of your screen, you'll see a tweet by TomTom that really connects well with athletes and running enthusiasts. It uses a really impactful image for that purpose. Then, on the top right, you'll see that Tesco have a really nice use of video. Let's see it go play it out. It's not a long video, but it's a really good way of connecting with people. On the bottom left, you'll see Boohoo.com, and again, they use a highly visual image, but it's also a very direct response tweet. And on the bottom right, you'll see that Xbox use what's called a scratch reel. This is a type of video that you can actually fast forward or replay however you want to do. You can engage with it right there and there in the tweet. So after looking at passions, let's finally look through some examples of tweets that effectively address signals of intent. What we mean by this is tweets that actually shown at the right time to the right audience could actually drive real action. Here are some more stats to keep in mind when you're having your conversations with your clients about direct action coming from Twitter. A lot of people are influenced by the things they see on Twitter when they're considering what to buy or do. For example, over 2/3 of Twitter users in the UK have already purchased something from the brands they follow on Twitter. 2/3 also of Twitter users have actually purchased something based on the kind of tweets they've seen. And finally, almost a half of us have tweeted asking for specific shopping advice on Twitter. With so many people influenced by what they see on Twitter, and so many people seeking information through Twitter on their next shopping decisions, it's natural that Twitter is also a great platform to turn consideration into action. And here we see 2 examples of tweets that effectively stimulate action in kind of fun ways. On the left-hand side, you see a tweet by Air New Zealand asking a question. They're using a new feature called a Twitter poll in their tweet, where anyone can vote on a key question. They're a great way to connect with your followers, but they also provide really insightful answers on things like here they're asking about a great offer they have. On the right-hand side, you see Misguided use a tweet with what we call a website card. This is a combination of an image, a link, and a call to action button, and this kind of tweet has been designed and engineered to boost engagement. It's a tweet aimed at getting people from Twitter to the customer's website, and in this case, Misguided are using it really well in a kind of a fun way by using emoji as well. Here's 2 more examples of tweets leading to direct response actions, but with a fun twist. First off, on the left you see a tweet by Domino's where they introduced a plan where anyone could actually order a pizza from them simply by tweeting to them the emoji of a pizza. I can't even imagine how this actually worked logistically, but it worked and it proved very effective for direct response. Taco Bell, on the right-hand side, got a bit playful with Twitter users, and in this campaign, anyone was able to basically tweet to them 2 emojis, one emoji of a taco and another one was whatever they wanted, and Taco Bell would tweet back to them a response with a custom emoji personalized for them. Both these examples are really effective in driving a direct response in a fun way. We've seen some great examples of effective tweets by brands in 2015, but now let's take the next step and start planning ahead for the new year. This is a great time of the year to reflect a bit and strategize on how you can make a real impact going forward for your clients. If 2015 was a big year on Twitter, we know that 2016 is probably going to be a lot bigger. There are a lot of big events that will happen next year that will really get people talking. It's the massive year for sports, for example, with both the Olympics and the European Championships for football, but it's also going to be a really big event year for culture and TV moments. One way to start planning ahead as an agency is to draw up a calendar for all of your clients. Think about what are the key moments you want to participate in each month for each specific brand. In this example, we're looking at February 2016 with a number of color-coded events for different types of clients. In purple, you'll see those are 2 sporting events. In red, you'll see Valentine's Day can be perhaps relevant to almost everyone. In green again, those are the London and Milan Fashion Weeks. And in blue, you'll see Mobile World Congress could be really relevant for certain kind of tech brands, for example. So map out each month in advance which type of conversations you want your brands to take part in. And let's say you're planning ahead for February and looking at a specifically one big event for your clients, Valentine's Day. Let's say you have a client who sells gifts like flowers or something like that can be quite romantic and really benefit from this specific moment. This is what a plan could look like when you capture this moment on Twitter. First of all, you'll see in yellow on the left-hand side of the screen how planning really starts well ahead of time. It's important to get the practical details like client approval and budgets approved well in advance. In the pink bar in the middle, you'll see this is a reflection of the kind of organic and unpaid tweets you can make on this topic. And you can see that you can start as early as 2 weeks ahead of time and tweet a lot more closer to the actual date. There's actually no golden rule to saying how many tweets you should be making, but quite a few businesses tweet less often than they could. So you can try at least 3 to 5 times a day. And on the top, in the middle, you'll see in blue, the Promoted Tweets campaign. So Promoted Tweets are a great way to capture share of voice through an always-on campaign. For example, you could target your Promoted Tweets campaign with the hashtags Valentine's Day or gift ideas throughout this whole time period. So, a Valentine's Day is a good example of a big event, but you should also remember to plan your clients' everyday moments tweets well ahead of advance as well. So here's an example of a weekly schedule of tweets that you can create on behalf of your clients for any given week. First of all, there's a number of different topics that you can cover almost on a daily basis, whether it's behind-the-scenes views of your client's business, questions that they ask their followers, or customer spotlights of the people using their products, or unique offers that they really want to drive action towards. These kind of tweets can be organized in a way that you get a good variety of tweets coming out from your client's handle. On top of that, you can always promote any given important topic through your always-on Promoted Tweets campaigns. Once you've agreed with your client what you're going to be tweeting about, there's a number of ways that you can schedule your tweets well ahead in advance. For example, you can use Twitter ads to schedule both paid and unpaid tweets at ads.twitter.com. Or you can use TweetDeck, which is a powerful tool also run by Twitter, at tweetdeck.twitter.com. And finally, you can use a number of different third-party tools, such as Hootsuite, to do your tweet scheduling. Another useful thing to remember, specifically if you're intending to do some promoted campaigns, is that you can draft your campaigns well in advance and see the potential reach even before you pitch their campaigns to your clients. So you can adjust your targeting settings in a draft campaign, you can adjust your bids and so forth, and in Twitter ads you will get a reach estimator there that will give you an indication of how large the potential campaign reach is going to be. Now, how do you make sure your clients' tweets get seen by the relevant audiences on Twitter? Some of your clients may not yet have that many followers yet, so how can you make sure that their tweets get seen by more relevant people? When you're advertising, you should know that there's over a dozen ways that you can target your promoted tweets to a relevant audience in Twitter ads. As an agency, it's actually your responsibility to test and find the right targeting options for your clients. So you want to make sure that you boost visibility of your clients' tweets to people disposed to drive action, and you'll find them by picking the relevant keywords, interests, or other targeting options found in your Twitter ads campaigns. So far in this webinar, we've looked at some of the big moments in 2015 and how brands were able to incorporate them into their strategies and tweets. We also looked at some of the ways that you can plan ahead and schedule some of your activities in 2016. In the final section of this webinar, we can look at some of the best practices in terms of content, so the things that you can include in your tweets to make them more effective. So again, when we look through these best practices, we're going to go through the same topics of everyday moments, big events, passions, and intent, but this time look at these from the point of view of the kind of tweet content you want to be sharing. Our first content suggestion and best practice for 2016 is explore ways that you can use more video in your tweets. So native videos has really taken off on Twitter, and it's really something each brand should use in 2016. Another best practice for 2016 is plan some of your great content ahead of time to react for real-time events. And in this case, you can see that in the rain break during Wimbledon, this is the kind of tweet Tesco was able to tweet when they had already planned this campaign and the creatives well in advance. Next, let's look at a couple of ideas of how you can connect with some of the big events happening in 2016. So one effective way to drive conversations during a big event is to use a promoted trend. And with a promoted trend, any customer and client can get to the top of the trends leaderboard on a given day. And in this example, EE used a promoted trend to get EE BAFTAs hashtag to be the #1 trend and really capture the conversation around the BAFTAs. Another good practice with big events is to keep the conversation going after the event is over. So in this example, O2 showcased some of the great engagements they got from other Twitter users through looking back in this tweet after the big Six Nations tournament. Next up, let's look at tweet examples of tweets related to people's passions they share on Twitter. Here's a good example of a tweet for people planning ahead for Eurovision in 2016. And specifically here, if you look at the tweet on the right, EasyJet did a very dynamic competition where people could actually vote for who they think is going to win Eurovision during the live broadcast. And they actually rewarded everyone who got the right answer with a good offer related to that contest. It's just a good idea of how to engage people during a live event. Now, you know people are going to be very passionate during the European Championships this summer and during the Olympics. And if your clients have any kind of unique exclusive content they can create timed around these events, it can be really effective content to use, like we'll see in this example from Adidas. Now finally, let's go through some of the best practices we can share about creating direct response tweets in the new year. So we've left perhaps the best and most important best practice of the whole webinar to the end, because we know that many of your clients are specifically asking you to get more visits from Twitter to their websites. And we also know from our Twitter users that many of them are curious and often demonstrate intent to visit sites. So for this reason, we've created an ad unit specifically realized to tap onto this potential. And we mentioned it earlier in the webinar. It's called a website card. So what is a website card? It's a tweet that includes a lot of extra features that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. For example, an image, a headline text, and a call to action button. So everything in this tweet is clickable. So whether you click on the tweet itself, or you click on the image or the call to action button, all of those clicks will link to the client's website. So the great thing about using them is that they give you a lot more real estate in your tweets and give clear indications and paths to Twitter users to get from Twitter to the client's sites. So it's time to wrap up a bit here. In this webinar, we've looked at some of the creative ways brands were able to use Twitter in 2015. And we also shared some best practices that you can take when you're planning ahead for success with your clients in the new year. So what are the other steps you can take from now until the new year? Well, first of all, you can go to business.twitter.com, where you can get a lot more information on many of the topics we covered today. You can go to ads.twitter.com to start scheduling your tweets and drafting your campaigns ahead for the Christmas period, but also for the new year. And finally, you can go to twitterflightschool.com, which is our dynamic training module and experience for agencies. So in Flight School, you can choose a specific training program related to your role in your agency, and you can get a lot more strategic insights and ideas of best practices going forward. I'm happy to share one more thing. We've got an exclusive competition running only for the people who are actually listening to this webinar today. So you have a chance of winning 1 out of 3 Twitter Flight School swag packs, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen here. So to be eligible to win, you should go to Twitter Flight School, which is our online training module for agencies. You should complete one of the 4 courses available for you there. There will be 4 depending on what kind of role you have in your agency. Each of them should take roughly about 30 to 40 minutes to complete. And once you're done, you should print your certificate and tweet to us in a creative way that you've completed it with the hashtag TwitterFlightSchool. Now, these entries for this competition will close this Thursday, December the 17th. So I really thoroughly recommend that you get started, because this is a great offer to take part in. And thanks again for listening in to this webinar.